everyone. Welcome to Hypno Athletics, exercising your mind towards universal harmony and spiritual wisdom through healthy living and self-defense. I'm your master hypnotist and host, Hakeem Alexander. Today I'll be unlocking the secrets of thought, and I'm going to be talking about something I call Memetically Engineered Feuds. Now, you may have heard of genetically engineered foods. I'm calling this Memetically Engineered Feuds. So, what exactly can we define that as? Well, you probably, if you're a internet savvy person, which you very well may be, if you're someone that, for example, is on social media and the internet a lot, you may know what a meme is. And, of course, you know engineering and feuds. But I'd like to go over some definitions of that in a little bit here. But why am I doing this? Well, first I'm going to be using a bit of hypnoanalysis, using my academic and professional experience as a clinical hypnotist to analyze a couple of things, that some subjects that are going to hit a very sensitive area for a lot of people. It's going to be, it's definitely going to be somewhat controversial. And they're both actually political. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is going to be pretty heavy. It's going to be pretty heavy. And the two subjects I'm going to be hypnoanalyzing today on Memetically Engineered Feuds is basically the upcoming elections and what a lot of people call the two-party trap, and also the Black Lives Matter movement. And I may get into something else, a third area there. Maybe I'll talk about this Netflix original series called Luke Cage, which is creating a lot of buzz for people. And there's a lot of interesting reasons for all of that stuff. But so those are the two or maybe three topics that we're going to be hypnoanalyzing. And first, before I do all that, like I said, I'm going to give you some definitions, mainly because I want you to understand exactly where I'm coming from. I want us to be, as the saying goes, on the same page. We have to at least define these three terms for certain so you know where I'm coming from. And once I get this podcast online, it'll be on YouTube, as well as my website, gurugrandmaster.com, and also on hypnoathletics.com. Those are at least the three places that it'll show up. I'll have the definitions in writing on there for your reference. So, again, 3 words defining Memetically Engineered Feuds. And like I said, it's so that we can be on the same page, and you'll have these to reference wherever, and at least the 3 sites that I have this podcast published on. So let's just first look at a meme. Okay? What is a meme? Well, as I've defined it in the simplest terms that I possibly could find for this popular bit of information, a meme is easily shared, repeated, and replicated elements, units, or bits of cultural ideas between people. Okay? Easily shared, repeated, and replicated elements, units, or bits of cultural ideas between people. And so then the word memetically means made of, linked, or associated memes. So memetically is these linked or associated units and bits of cultural ideas that's easily shared and repeated and replicated between people. And another thing, genes are analogous to, memes are analogous to genes. So genetically, memetically, okay? Engineer. To cleverly and or mathematically design systems, materials, and structures for a purpose. That's the definition I'm using. So to engineer is to cleverly and or mathematically design systems, materials, and structures for a purpose. And finally, feud. A feud, that's the simplest or the easiest definition we might all know more, is a fight, dispute, conflict, argument, or sometimes hostile disagreement. Sometimes hostile disagreement. And so, if I put all those together, how I've defined the phrase memetically engineered feuds, I would say that a memetically engineered feud is a purposefully created conflict of ideas, usually for the purpose of division and conquest of a targeted culture. Even more shortened and concise, I could say that memetically engineered feud is malicious, viral, insightful propaganda. Now, when I say insightful, I'm taking it from the word incite, I-N-C-I-T-E, not I-N-S-I-G-H-T, which, although sometimes having insight with an S, can also incite rage and feuds. So that's what a memetically engineered feud is. A purposely created conflict of ideas, usually for the purpose of division and conquest of a targeted culture. Malicious viral propaganda. So, and the two subjects that I'm focusing on here, mainly, the two main ones, the two-party trap and Black Lives Matter, I believe, fall under the category of memetically engineered feuds. They're wars of information. So, another thing that you'll get out of this, what we're going to look at are what's called the 3 hypnotic modalities and the 2 laws of hypnosis. And these are important because they're going to inform us on exactly how this works. As I like to do with everything, I like to help to deprogram people and uncover the rampant brainwashing, the pandemic of brainwashing that's in our world. And, I have an academic and professional background working in clinical hypnosis, hypnoanalysis, as well as coaching, consulting my clients using hypnosis and their related modalities and tools. So let's start off with the 3 hypnotic modalities and how this works. Here's some of the ingredients for memetically engineered feuds. And we'll go with the 3 hypnotic modalities. The first hypnotic modality, which is basically hypnotic modality, is a tool or a modality that is required or necessary in order to create an effective psychological or social environment to hypnotize people. And the first one's called authority, or one-upsmanship. We consider, for example, people like myself, whose profession it is, who have degrees and diplomas in things like clinical hypnosis, for example, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a medical doctor, a politician like a mayor, a governor, the president, the government as an entity itself. people consider these to be authorities. And information is accepted by people more often by others that they consider to be authorities than if they were not. And also there's a lot of different things that go with that, like depending on the clothes that a person's wearing. Special clothing is part of authority, like a doctor's white medical or white lab coat. The clothes that religious clergy people in the Catholic Church might wear, for example. Even the difference between wearing jeans and a t-shirt or a suit and tie. The second hypnotic modality is translogic paradigm and doctrine. So those three things, it could be one or a couple of those. Translogic is sometimes called transitory logic. It's just something that seems logical right away, just long enough to slip some information past a person's critical filter or critical faculty to get it in their subconscious mind. A paradigm, that's kind of like a zeitgeist or a spirit of the times or a way that things are. It's not necessarily written down, but it's a way that people normally accept things to go, a paradigm. It's also in the schools of hypnosis, a paradigm is also the beliefs, the mindset, and the attitudes that you have in your subconscious mind. It's just kind of like a way that people accept the way that things are, that determines their behavior and drives their emotions. And finally, a doctrine. A doctrine is basically the written form of a paradigm, and maybe even more detailed, and it's usually issued or published by an authority figure or authority entity, like, for example, the Bibles of different religions could be considered a doctrine. And then finally, the third hypnotic modality is internal experience and overload. So, an internal experience is something like emotions. Emotions are something psychological or mental that's physically felt in your body. And overload, specifically I'm talking about here message units, overload of message units or information coming into your perception, your senses. That's overload. So, the three hypnotic modalities: authority, translogic paradigm doctrine, or internal experience overload. And now we'll move on to the two laws of hypnosis, so you can see kind of the ways that those three hypnotic modalities are used with these two laws of hypnosis, or the two laws of self-hypnosis, to have a more effective state of hypnosis or hypnotic state. And the two laws of hypnosis are repetition and association. And I like to link up these two things. The two laws of hypnosis are repetition of images and association of emotions with those images. Because we need to get ideas into the subconscious mind, which usually the subconscious mind has this critical filter that rejects information, ideas, paradigms that are unfamiliar to it. So because the subconscious mind, its job is to protect us for our survival. And so if it figures if we've gotten this far with the ideas and everything we have already in our subconscious mind, anything else that's coming in that's new or unfamiliar may be dangerous. It may be a threat to the survival of the organism, us, the person that the subconscious mind happens to be individualized within. And so repetition of emotionally charged images are one of the more effective ways to get ideas into the subconscious mind. So now, looking at something very interesting that goes along with both the two-party trap and the Black Lives Matter movement. One thing, we need to understand how these things can be broken down, and once you hear this, it's going to start to make more sense to you why both of these topics and subjects should be under a lot more scrutiny. A lot of people should be looking a lot more closely at these two subjects than they are. And first, listen to this. You already intuitively, and you know this is the truth, that you and we make the best decisions when we have all of the options. See, the more information we have, the more options we know of, the better decisions we can make. We make more informed decisions that way. You know, if you, in the two-party system, Democrats and Republicans, for example, there are at least two other parties, the Green Party and the Libertarian Party. But most people are just focusing on Republicans and Democrats because a lot of people believe that those are the only two viable or valid choices that they have. They feel like people have been told that they're wasting their votes if they vote Libertarian or Green Party, and this is not true. But everybody, even a lot of the authority figures, remember authority is the first hypnotic modality that's used for hypnosis. A lot of authority figures are focusing only on Democrats and Republicans. And we don't get to see or hear the voices or the representatives of the Green and Libertarian parties as much as we do on the mainstream media, for example, as we do the two parties of Republican and Democrat. And as far as Black Lives Matter go, there's two problems, another set of issues with that. And the issues with that are, first of all, I'm going to address this part of it first. Like YouTube videos or online videos of police activity. And one thing that a lot of people are talking about is white privilege. And we have videos out there where you see, for example, a white person or Caucasian person with an axe lunging at police or something like that and being taken down without lethal force, or the police coming up onto a scene where a guy has eaten somebody's face off and he's already killed people, but they take him without lethal force. And people will talk about all this stuff about how, there's all these videos of these white people, these Caucasians, who have weapons and are even pointing guns at the police, but they get taken down with non-lethal force. And yes, you have seen those videos. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it that those are there. And then on the other hand, you have a lot of videos that are circulating, and information and images, that police are shooting unarmed black men. And again, I'm not going to doubt that those are out there. You can see it. It's plain to see. However, that's not the whole story. Just like with the media representing the two parties, doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of other undocumented events going on. And the facts, the research, the statistics don't support that there's a national agenda by the police targeting and killing unarmed black men. I'm not saying that there's no racism in this country. I see it all the time. I mean, look at some of the Donald Trump rallies. There's some ridiculous stuff going on. But again, that's what the media is showing us. Just because that's what we're seeing does not mean that's all that there is. Okay, so we can, and because there's information being omitted, right? So you've heard the phrase sins of omission. See, and that goes back to what I was just saying. We make the best decisions only when we have all of the options. But if we only rely on the options that are offered to us, we are more vulnerable to deception. If we only rely on the options that are offered to us, we are more vulnerable to deception. So what we need to do first is explore, research, and discover information and options from extra sources beyond the normal outlets, channels, and media. See, if we do that, you'll start to discover that there's a lot more going on than what's just being presented to us in the newspapers, on the radio, and on television and the internet. Okay, we're being bombarded by multimedia messages, which goes to our overload, the third hypnotic modality, which is causing an internal experience of emotion, right? And a lot of it's just translogic, which is the second hypnotic modality. It makes sense for a short time just to get that information past you. And it becomes a paradigm that this whole idea of that there are really only two parties that are really valid, and that black people are being unfairly targeted for execution and assassination by the police, those have become paradigms. That's people are just believing that that's just the way it is, and that's what they're operating from. But if we begin to explore research and discover information options from extra sources beyond the normal outlets, channels, and media, then we can proceed to complete our knowledge gaps with even more options. See, once again, we make the best decisions when we have all the options. So we can complete our knowledge gaps with even more options by using our enthusiasm, passion, ambition, and determination in the form of imagination to create the realization of what is possible beyond what we already know. See, imagination equals mind power. It's the power horse of the mind. Imagination equals mind power. See, what imagination does, and what doing research beyond the normal outlets and channels, what that does for us, it helps us to see and discover possibilities. And possibilities is a word that we can use interchangeably or in the place of the word options. Possibilities. We make the best decisions when we have all of the options. We make the best decisions when we have all of the possibilities, or when we know all of the possibilities, or what more is possible. So, imagination is also known as, I guess we could say, imagination is, it's mind power, but imagination is our most powerful tool, because it directly and most effectively impresses information into our subconscious minds. So imagination is a way of discovering new info for ourselves by working from the inside out instead of only from the usual outside in. See, we can take the information that we know, look further, and then come up with our own ideas and postulate or speculate about other possibilities, rather than just immediately accepting and forming conclusions based on what's coming to us from the outside, from what other people are saying. And yes, when you go research and look at other sources beyond the normal outlets, channels, and media, you are looking at what other people are saying, but you're going beyond just the two parties, or just what's coming to us from the Black Lives Matter or All Lives Matter movement, right? So, but the main part of this is that a lot of times we often are working from the outside in, but we're not doing it deliberately and intentionally. See, one thing is that we're getting this information, and it's mixing around and causing all different types of possibilities and things like that from the inside out, but it's based on limited information. Remember, the main idea here we're talking about is that we make the best decisions, or we come to the most logical conclusions, or make the best decisions when we have all the options, or when we know all the possibilities. And a lot of us are coming to conclusions and making decisions without all of the information or knowing all of the possibilities. And the thing about this is that our subconscious mind does not know the difference between something that we imagine and a real external event. Because imagination is so powerful. Imagination is mind power. It helps to get past the critical filter and implant itself directly into our subconscious mind. The things that we experience outside of ourselves through our senses, and the things that we imagine, our subconscious mind doesn't know the difference. Think about this. This is why, for example, you might still feel very emotional about a dream even long after you have accepted that it was all in your head. A lot of people I know can relate to this. You've had dreams that still affect you emotionally. Days, weeks, months, even years after the dream. Because a lot of dreams are emotional. You still feel it long after you've already accepted that it was all in your head. It may not be affecting you as much, but it still had an emotional impact. It's still not part of your memory. It's been implanted in your subconscious mind. Now, whether or not it has been neutralized or outweighed by something else that's planted in your subconscious mind is another story. That can happen. But still, we can all relate to that experience. So the point is that we should always be seeking additional information while being open-minded enough to change our narrative or story, our inner dialogue, whenever we find more relevant and truthful information or find more relevant and truthful perspective. It's in my opinion, my professional opinion, that it's not a good idea to just form a conclusion and stick to it unless you have all the facts. See, in the case of the two-party trap and Black Lives Matter, too many people are limiting their understanding and making uninformed conclusions, or only partially informed conclusions, or I could also say incompletely informed conclusions. And again, remembering this main idea that we make the best decisions when we have all the options. So now let's look at, again, go back to the title of this offering here that I'm giving you in this podcast, this video, however you might be taking this information in. Memetically Engineered Feuds. Right? Memetically Engineered Feuds. Division and Conquest. Right? Remember, I believe from analyzing this through the hypnotic modalities and the laws of hypnosis, that the Black Lives Matter movement and this two-party trap that's been going on for so many years, they're basically purposefully created conflict of ideas for the purpose of division and conquest of a targeted culture, or nation in this case. It's malicious viral propaganda. And right now we're seeing two sides, right? People are pointing out that we have the police versus black people, mainly black males. And then on the other hand, with the two-party trap, we have Democrats versus Republicans. But that's not the whole picture. Because in the same way that Democrats and Republicans are not the only two valid parties, the same way that the only information that there's not just black people versus the police. There's a much wider issue going on here. And a lot of things that the Black Lives Matter movement are doing is not very helpful either, because anything that creates further division and conflict and fighting, disputes, arguments, and hostility, none of that stuff is helpful. And you can see how these purposefully created conflicts are creating big divisions between people. It's like dismantling years and years and years of work in politics and civil rights. You know, we have so many progressive things happening, but at the same time, it's these two topics, you know, the two-party trap and Black Lives Matter and all the negative publicity going against police, it's really going backwards. These two ideas are failures, because you could look at the truth of the two parties, Democrats and Republicans, or sometimes I like to say the Republicans and the Democrats. People always talk about we have to vote for the lesser of two evils. Well, why do you want to vote for anything that's evil at all? There's not only two. You have at least 4 choices. And your votes will count, and you can actually elect a Green Party or Libertarian Party president. Hillary Clinton is not the only woman, if that's what people are concerned about. They want to vote a woman into office. Jill Stein, so a woman, Dr. Jill Stein, is also a woman. And a lot of people, if you really look at it truthfully, objectively, is a much better candidate than Hillary Clinton. Much better candidate than Donald Trump. But I'm not here to impose my political opinions, because we also have a libertarian candidate, right? So, and in the same way, the only things that are we don't just have white privilege, and the reality is not just that there are white people getting away with confronting the police and resisting arrest and still being spared lethal force. That's not the only thing that's happening. Okay? And we don't just have we don't have unarmed black males just getting killed by the police. That's only a partial narrative. Okay? That's not the only thing that's going on. And again, we have Gary Johnson and Jill Stein. Gary Johnson of the Libertarian Party and Jill Stein of the Green Party, who are also running for president, that a lot of people should be looking into. So, again, let's look at this hypnoanalysis, the main point, right? So what I'm saying is that this is like how a lot of people say that genetically engineered foods are a menace to our environment, to people's health. The same thing, these memetically engineered feuds are a huge danger to our global society. I mean, we've got to be... I mean, I would... Living in China, okay, looking back in the United States, being separated from the United States, me looking from China at the media, it's scary and ridiculous to see the two people that are being focused on in American politics. And at the same time, also scary and ridiculous, the whole thing that's going on with the information that people are taking in about Black Lives Matter. People have come to the conclusion, and they're so sure. And once again, I'm not saying that there's no racism in our country, but this country has a lot of healing to go. I've had people do some crazy things to me based on my race. Just walking down the street and going certain places. I'm not saying there's no racism. I'm saying that the narrative is limited. That you're not just seeing Caucasian or white people getting away with threatening the police and resisting arrest and not having lethal force used on them. And the other part of that narrative is not just unarmed black men getting assassinated, murdered by white police officers or police in general. That's not the complete picture. That's not the whole story. And if you stop right there, then you've effectively fallen victim to these memetically engineered feuds. You've essentially fallen victim to a form of brainwashing that is purposely created to divide and conquer people. Memetically engineered feuds are some of the most powerful ways of using hypnotic modalities and the laws of hypnosis to cause division and conquest. I'm going to go over in another podcast what some of those possibilities, what those reasons may be. But really, one of the most obvious ones is to distract us from other things that are happening, distracting us. So let's look at the fact that there were millions of gallons of oil spilled in the Gulf of Mexico. Let's look at the fact that there's this pipeline that's being built in land, and that these indigenous people are being abused, having attack dogs sicked on them, sprayed with mace and arrested just for not wanting this pipeline to be put on their land that they've already been forced into these little plots called reservations. What about this Trans-Pacific Partnership? There are so many other things that are actually more important. Or I wouldn't say more important, but that also are there, but we have only a few things being focused on, and it's narrowing our vision. Which, I like to use the word vision for something greater. Vision is really something that you have when you use your imagination to seek out possibilities, where sight is simply just taking in information from what you could see, what's being fed to you. A visionary is someone who seeks out more options and possibilities. Whereas someone who can just see is only just taking in the information that's being offered to them by so-called authority figures, our media, our governments, our doctors. It's not the whole truth. We cannot make good choices. We cannot make the best decisions if we don't have all the options. We need to complete our knowledge gaps by being enthusiastic, passionate, ambitious, and determined to explore, research, and discover. Use our imagination so we can create the realization of more options, more possibilities, so that we can make more informed decisions. Because it's very sad to see, almost infuriating sometimes, that these are some of the only subjects that people are focusing on right now. And let's see. I've got about 7 minutes left that I'm going to talk here. So one of the third things I wanted to talk about, which may not seem as important to everyone as much as possible, but here's, there's a common theme in the two-party trap and what's more obvious in Black Lives Matter movement, and this third thing I'm going to talk about, which is the Netflix original series Luke Cage. They all have the one element of racism, which again is divide and conquer, division and conquest. It's pitting people on one side or the other. Red versus blue, black versus white. And what's happened with the Luke Cage series, a lot of people are really upset that a show that has a black male lead as the hero, that's set in Harlem, New York, has a majority black cast. And the cast is by far not all black. There are a lot of other races represented in that show, but people just can't get over that the majority of the cast is black. You should see the ridiculous complaints and things like that online. And it's so ridiculous, too, because, there was a big meme that was going on about how you had a lot of people, specifically Caucasians, playing roles that you could easily find the races that the roles were written to play. For example, I like Scarlett Johansson. I think she's great. She's a beautiful person on the outside. She's a decent actress. Love her in the Avengers movie and several other films I've seen. But she's in Ghost in the Machine, and that role is definitely a Japanese role. And there's lots of Japanese actresses that could fill that role easily, that are great. And I'm not saying that Scarlett Johansson shouldn't be cast in that role. Maybe she's going to do it justice. But it's just, there's a lot of one-sidedness that people are just complaining about something that doesn't even make any sense. It's like, you have to understand, you have to see that whenever we have these strong emotions about something that causes us to have conflicts and want to argue with and hate other people, you're a victim. You've effectively been victimized. It's a terrible thing for people to go around hating each other because of stuff that they're seeing in the media and that they're hearing from other people. When you start getting emotionally driven to hate or hurt or isolate yourself from other people, that's a brutal, malicious form of brainwashing. You've been effectively mutated by this memetically engineered feud of one form or the other. And that's the way that you can diagnose it, by the symptom. The sickness is hatred. Symptom. The symptom is just people going around and hating each other and hurting each other because of it. And it spreads out through our environment locally, the countries that we live in, and throughout the world. And it makes it a sad, scary place to live in. When we think that these are the only things that are going on. When all we are presented with and what we decide, and we go along with it and believe that we have to pick a side against people, black or white, red or blue. That's sad, and it's scary, and it's wrong. All right. So, I'm going to conclude this for now, but there's going to be a lot more on this subject in the future, using a lot of these elements, mainly the fact that we can make better decisions when we have all the options, and talking more about the mechanics of hypnosis and brainwashing and mind control and the development of fears and phobias. They all share a common thread that we need to know, because one of the most dangerous things about hypnosis is not knowing that it's real or that you can be hypnotized. You've been listening to Hypno Athletics, exercising your mind towards universal harmony and spiritual wisdom through healthy living and self-defense. I'm your master hypnotist and host, Hakeem Alexander, and I'll catch you on the next wave. Stay well.